we come into a program like this and we want to manifest something specific, and that's great. And so we start like rewriting, we're doing all the things, all the things, all the things. And sometimes we forget about all the other things that we also could be rewriting. Not to say that there's any pressure whatsoever to fix ourselves. No way. I have a solid list of quirky things about myself that I have no intention of fixing. And they're not like, oh, quirky, cute. They're like major limiting beliefs. Like I could tell you all about how like I am clumsy and I bump into things and like there's all sorts of stuff like that. And whenever I say these things, I hear myself. I hear myself declaring something that I don't really want. And I usually hear myself doing this and I usually laugh and I think, oh, I could totally rewrite that. I could totally shift this. It's not rocket science. It would be really easy, but I just don't do it. And so I give myself permission to just be fucking human and not feel like I have to fix everything. However, there's this other gray area of things where if you become aware of it, it's usually become aware of it a little later on. You're like, oh, this isn't so high priority like my health or my or like the financial situation or growing the business, but it is still a story. And I'll give you an example. This is the reason why this has popped in my mind was that I'm on this camping trip and I am like I've got my mom, my aunt, and my grandmother. And these are some like quirky personalities, like, right? Like I love them to death, but there's like, must be some like residual old stuff about like my relationship with them and whether I enjoy this time or not. So like I'm a very healthy person and like the first thing for me is like going in and like I can see myself I'm getting out of whack. Like I'm looking at like the like buckets of ice cream and the sodas and the junk food and like one full cabin is full of like every bread item that is sold in a grocery store. And I'm like, oh my God, like, can I be here right now? Right? But that's a story. That is something in me, right? So then the natural thing would be like, oh, like I don't like this, or I don't want to be here and I don't want to be there. And even though these things are true, this is still my mind focusing on certain things. And I could choose to focus on them, or like whether I'm like sitting around and like really enjoying myself or not, or whether I feel like I'm really connecting. And so it's really interesting that I think that there's a huge opportunity in things that aren't critical but are still important. And I was even realizing like I have a great relationship with my mom. She lives 15 minutes away. She's at my house all the time. But I recently noticed that I still have these like subtle stories over the dynamic and realizing, oh, all things can absolutely and I remember thinking in my mind, like, do I go and talk to her about these things? Do I go and talk to her and say, hey, like, I think we could have a better relationship if, or do I go and try to solve these things? But then I found myself realizing I've never once sat down and written out my story about this. I've never once shifted this. I've never actually like done energy work on this. So I want to kind of just like throw out the question, and we're not going to do much. I just want to plant the seed. So I want you to like maybe just take a piece of paper. You're not going to save this forever. This is literally like you can throw this out tonight. We're just going to plant the seeds on what are some ideas I have? What are some like low priority ideas that I have about myself, about how the world works, about my relationship with somebody, about what I like, about what I don't like, and just starting to realize, oh, all of the, like, there's all sorts of other things that can be shifted. Like even like one thing that comes to mind is I've heard a family member say before, I just could never go to a gym. I hate gyms. I hate gyms. Boom. And of course, we're allowed to have preferences. Of course, we are allowed to sift and sort. That is the whole point here, right? That is the whole point, is to come into this world and experience it and decide what we like and what we don't like and lean into what we like and practice aligning ourselves. But then we can also challenge ourselves a little bit. We can also like maybe second guess some of these defining things we say about ourselves, about other people, about our life. And we could just see if they're really real, right? So if somebody just says something like, I don't like to go to the gym. I don't like the winter. I don't like being around this person. I don't like this kind of food. Maybe those are true, but maybe those are stories. Maybe those are just things we've been saying for a really long time. And if there was a little WD-40 on them, maybe we would open up a crack in the door to find a whole other area of the world to enjoy. Right? So like even just the example of like, oh, I hate the gym. You know, sometimes people who are in like physical stuff, they'll like, there's this like whole loop of things, which basically leads them to never being able to make progress, right? They only like to run, but now they can't run. They only want to work out outside and they can't in the winter. Or they only like to do this thing, but that thing's not available. And so it's really worth questioning yourself, like, do I really not like this? Or is this just something I've been saying for a really long time? And we can shift it directly, or we can shift our attention. And so when I caught myself sitting around this like gorgeous campfire with my family that are really all very much sweethearts, kind of in this neutral mood of like, oh, like, I don't know, like, this is fine. I could approach it general, or I could approach it head on specific. So the general way to shift would be to sit back and milk the beauty of the view, and to milk the fresh air, and to enjoy and like then look at everybody there and actively appreciate them. Or questions, and then rewrite some things like, oh, I don't like this, or I would rather be doing this, and just shift it. And it's kind of like shifting it up a little bit and asking. And then another really powerful question is, what could I do what would make this wonderful, right? What would make this really fun? And for me, when I thought the first thing that came into my mind was exercise. I would love some exercise right now because we're just kind of sitting around doing nothing. And so it's really quite amazing how we can shift out of our ideas on how people are and how things are really, really quickly, right? Maybe you're frustrated at your work or frustrated at your business. Well, we can go general and say, well, I love this aspect of it. I love that I get to do this. I love that I get to do it here. Or we can ask ourselves, gosh, what would make this better? What would it look like if I loved this? What would it look like if I was really enjoying myself? So I had this thing where a couple of years ago where I wasn't doing it like, oh yeah, I hate Thanksgiving. I was coming to the group being like, wow, I'm catching myself in these thoughts where it was, oh, I don't like Thanksgiving. I don't like Thanksgiving food. And it was really empowering to then say, well, what would make me love this? What could I do? I, of course, could say, let me appreciate some things about this, but I also don't have to just, that's good, but I also can change it. There's some things in life we can't change. And then there's some things that it's amazing what we can do. Just saying, well, what could I do to make this better? What could I do to really enjoy this? And for me, for the Thanksgiving thing, I ended up deciding to do 0 Thanksgiving food on Thanksgiving. And that pretty much solved everything. I did 0 Thanksgiving food on Thanksgiving. I had to go because I was just stuck in like, I don't like this. I don't like this. I don't like this. And for years, I was like, I don't like this. And then I was like, well, if I was going to craft this so I really liked it, what would that look like? Well, I would have this food instead. I think I also changed the time to a Thanksgiving brunch. So my family was like in by 10 or 11 and out by 1 or 2 or something like that, which has been amazing. So right now I just want to plant the seed in your mind to start being suspicious about yourself in other areas. Not that there's pressure to go and, like I said, fix ourselves. There's no fixing ourselves. We are perfect as we are. We are on our journey. Everything is unfolding. But the more we catch ourselves, the more we have an opportunity to decide to shift or decide not to shift. And both of those things can be empowering. Both of those things can be really empowering.